Hey everyone, my name is Will Watson, and this past summer I rode this bike from Wilmington, North Carolina to Los Angeles, California, across the entire United States. I rode with my brother, and thank you. I rode with my younger brother David and 3 of our closest friends, and we rode 3,600 miles across the country on this piece of titanium and steel and plastic and a little bit of foam right here. And no, I did not go light speed. Anyway, so we rode, I think I have a map. There's the map of our route across the country, and we started in Wilmington, North Carolina with our back wheels in the Atlantic Ocean and rode until our front wheels touched the Pacific Ocean. And we rode across the fields of Kansas, the wheat fields of Kansas. We rode through the deserts of California and Arizona when the temperature was 118 degrees. We rode over the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee and over the mountains of Colorado. And 5 guys, 5 bikes, 55 cities, 3,600 miles, and 1 story to tell. And that story was important enough to us to ride across the whole country. And that was the story of Falling Whistles, which is a campaign for peace in the Congo, a country in Africa. And what Falling Whistles is it's this group of people who look and see where the world is and imagine where the world could be. See that there are people that are hurting, people that are dying, people that are oppressed, where there's poverty, and they see that there could be freedom and there could be peace, and so we're going to fight for that. Falling Whistles was started by my friend Sean, who worked for Tom's Shoes, some of you may have heard of it, in South Africa, and he went north until he got to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is a country in Central Africa. And what he found there was chaos. He found war. He found destruction. And he found these boys about you guys' age in this prison. And these boys told him the story of the whistleblowers. And the whistleblowers were young children about the age of your younger brothers or sisters who were kidnapped from their families and were sent to fight in a war not their own. But because they were so small, they were too small to carry a gun. And so the rebel armies would give them a whistle and send them to the front lines of the war to blow the whistle. And their sole duty was to make enough noise to scare the enemy away or to receive with their bodies the first round of bullets. And so my friend Sean heard this story and he said, you know, this is wrong. We have to do something about this. I don't want this to happen anymore. And so he set out to figure out what was happening in Congo. And what he found was that in the time that you guys have been alive, the world's largest war since World War II has been happening, where over 6 million people have died since you guys were born. And even today, 1,500 people continue to die every single day. By the end of the day today, if you imagine for a minute, if you took everybody in this auditorium, all you guys in the front row, everyone in the balconies, and you multiplied that number by 3, that's about 1,500 people. And so that amount of people will die today in Congo in a war that is fought over the minerals that end up in our cell phones and computers. The rebel armies mine in these mines, and they take the minerals, and then through this long supply chain, they end up in our cell phones and computers. And so Falling Whistles is trying to do something about this. They're trying to rehabilitate these kids through the use of these whistles, which is a symbol of protest against the world's largest war. And so through the money made from selling the whistles, children in Congo who've been affected by the war, who were former child soldiers, are fed, and then they go through this psychological counseling where through like expression or dance therapy, they're brought back to life. But the whistle, I guess, is more than just this tool to make money to help these kids across an ocean. I think it's also about us. And the whistle, what we did with Falling Whistles was we took the weapon of the whistleblowers and we made it into our voice. And so that's the story that my brother heard when he came up with this crazy idea to ride a bike across the country. And David, who's a sophomore at Duke University, looked at himself and he said, what can I do with who I am? I'm young, I don't have any money, I don't have any power, I don't have much influence, but what I do have is I do have 2 feet and I do have a voice. And so I'm going to use that voice and I'm going to use those 2 feet to ride a bike across the country and tell other people what's happening in Congo and try to do something about it. And so that's what we did. We had this bike tour where we had speaking engagements in 50 cities across the entire country. And the 5 of us set out from my hometown in Sherman, Texas, and we started training and we were exhausted trying to get in shape. And then we packed up all our stuff and we put it in the living room, in Mom's living room, and messed up the whole house, and then put it all in the car and took it to Wilmington, North Carolina, where we set out to ride across the entire country. And before long, we came to these hills and these mountains that looked like they were endless and we'd never get to the top. And then we did, and we got to the top, and we realized that after every uphill, there comes a downhill. And so this brotherhood was forming, these guys that were having a blast together and riding for a common cause, peace in Congo. And everywhere we went, we told the stories of what was happening in Congo and what each and every one of us can do to help change that. And we spoke to people in coffee shops, to groups large and small. And there was this young man in Kansas City who was 15, which I think is a year or two older than most of you guys. And he had a speaking event for us where we spoke to hundreds of people, and where through his efforts we raised over $1,000 for Falling Whistles, which was huge for a 15-year-old. And we spoke in people's living rooms, and we spoke in churches everywhere we went. And before long, we were standing on the bridge of the Mississippi River, and we looked back across 1,000 miles of the eastern United States, and we realized that what had once seemed impossible was becoming a reality. And then we came to the wheat fields of Kansas, and then before us, well, first of all, I got to talk about eating, because we were trying to eat a lot in order to be able to ride every day. And so you guys are probably eating about 2,000 to 3,000 calories a day. We were trying to eat between 8,000 and 10,000. And as you can see from my brother's face, it didn't taste very good most of the time. And then before us, we saw the Rocky Mountains looming, and then we were in the Rocky Mountains, and then we were riding up the Rocky Mountains. And then finally we get to the top of them, and we realized that we'd crossed the highest point that we were going to cross on our ride, and that there was another downhill that was next. And then there was this crazy sunset that night, and we all talked about what it was like to do this and to ride across the country. And we were at the Grand Canyon, looking out over the Grand Canyon, thinking we only have a couple hundred miles to go. And all of us developed these crazy tan lines on our legs and on our arms. Well, I guess, except for me, because I'm a redhead and I don't really tan, but the other guys had a lot of fun with it. And then there were these flat tires, and then we had more flat tires than I care to count or even remember. And it was cold, and it rained on us. We fell off our bikes, and we had bike wrecks, and every part of our bodies hurt. We were exhausted, and just so you know, New Mexico is not a good place to take naps because there isn't any grass anywhere. And so all along, we're forming this brotherhood of these guys who are fighting for a common cause, riding across the country. And I remember this day in Wilmington, North Carolina, at the start of the ride, when the odometer on my bike said 0. And then there was a day when it said 1,500. And then there was a day when it said 2,000. And then there was a day when we had done it, when we had ridden across the country. We had spoken to thousands of people, and we had raised over thousands of dollars for this organization trying to help people in Congo. When we got to the beach, we got to Venice Beach, and we put our bikes on our shoulders, and we sprinted across the sands, racing each other. And we dove into the water and threw our bikes to the side in this crazy euphoric moment of excitement, because we had had this dream, and it had now become a reality. We were done. We had done it. We had ridden 3,600 miles along the way, and we had told all these people about our passion and about what each of us can do to make a difference in this world. And so I guess that's when I want, well, first of all, as we were standing on the beach, we looked back over the past 2 months, and we realized that 2 months ago, 4 out of the 5 guys on the ride didn't have a bike. They didn't own a bike. They hadn't ridden a bike since they were 5 or 6 years old. And we had gotten on bikes and ridden 3,600 miles. And so that's, I guess, what I want to leave with you guys, is that right now it may seem like you're young. It may seem like you don't have much power or influence or money. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you guys may think that you're young. It doesn't matter that you don't have money. It doesn't matter that you don't have influence. It doesn't matter that you might not be the strongest or the coolest or the fastest or the smartest or the best looking or whatever. That doesn't matter. What does matter is that you and I can change the world if we work together. And you and I guess the world needs us to do that. The world needs us to look at it and see where the world is and to reimagine what it could be and to take the first steps to make that into a reality. And I think that's what the story of Falling Whistles leads to, is this question that we asked ourselves of, what can I do with who I am? What is it that you love doing? Who are you? What is it that you do well? What is it that gets you up every morning? What is it that excites you? And how can you use that to do that for other people? And to do that to make the world the kind of place that you wish to be in. So be a whistleblower for peace, and thank you very much.